coordinator for life. Library survey and bibliostat. So survey, the name of the survey is actually the public library survey. A lot of people call it the bibliostat survey. Bibliostat is the vendor that we use to collect the data. The actual survey is called the public library survey. It's part of a national data collection program through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So all 50 states and US territories collect data from public libraries and then report it to IMLS. And so we are in group 2. There's 3 groups of states. There's group 1, group 2, and group 3. Group 3 is Texas. Nothing else, just Texas, because they have like 800 and some libraries, so they have their own group for data collection. Our survey cycle runs mid-November, so the survey will launch in about a month, and then it will be open for data collection until mid-February. If you have questions, any questions about the survey, I am here to help you with it. So don't be afraid to give me a call, send me an email, especially if you're a new director. I see some faces of people that have done the survey before, and maybe a few new people that maybe have not done the survey before. If you have questions, feel free to give me a call. I can log in and look at your survey while you're looking at it on your end too, and that's helpful sometimes. So I found that what works best for this is to kind of give a brief overview of the website, and then actually we can get into a test survey and we'll kind of go through that. The good news is there's not a lot of changes this year. There will be next year, hopefully good changes. A lot of the changes are deletions, and the additions are kind of like yes, no type things. So that's pretty low burden. A lot of them we may be able to pre-fill for you, which helps because then you have to do it. Sorry, pre-fill for you. So when we get into this test survey, if you have questions, chime in at that part, and we'll see if we can answer those questions. And if I can't, I'll find out and get back to you. But most of the time, we can answer. So this is kind of the main page. We have one ID and password that gets you into Bibliostat, and it also gets you into your accreditation application if you're accredited through the commission. And then we have a supplemental survey. We'll take a look at that when we're done with this. And it's the same login and password for that as well for the supplemental survey. I would say that 99% of login problems, oh maybe not, maybe 90%. Are due to entering a capital O instead of a 0. All of our IDs and passwords, the IDs usually use, well, they always use NE and then a series of numbers. Make sure you enter a 0, not a capital. Password is PASS and then a series of numbers. If you don't have your password, let me know, or I will be sending out an email with the survey launch with your password and your library name. One thing that I do want to mention about passwords is if you're ever working on the survey and you've lost your password or can't get in, you can always email me. You can also call the commission's 800 number, like if I'm out of the office that day, you can call them, the reference desk, and they can look that up. But if you're working on your survey on the weekend, that doesn't help because we're not open. You can go to our website here, and I'll just show you this. You can type in lost password into our search box. And you see this third link under this, Bibliostat ID lookup. You can click on that and then enter the city that you're in. I'm just gonna do Bancroft. And then you'll get me disregarded. So I'll just send that, and oh well, because it originated from mine, so an email was sent to the library directly in test mode, that you would get a message there saying that your password would come via email. So that's kind of helpful if you're working on the weekend and can't get hold of it. So let's go back. This is kind of the main landing page for the public library survey and Bibliostat. You'll see up here, there's a link to the login. We'll get to that test survey in a minute. Again, it launches on November 13th, and it'll run through mid-February. you get into a bind, things come up, and if you're in a bind and that February deadline is difficult for whatever reason, people maybe things happen all the time. If you need extra time, just let me know what's going on, give me an email, give me a call. There's a copy of the blank survey here, and then a copy with the changes highlighted. This is helpful because a lot of people like to work on it offline, they like to either work on it in a paper format or a Word format, fill in all your data, and then just log into Bibliostat and enter everything in there all at once. Sometimes that's easier because you may need to go through paper to get reports, to get the data to enter. Survey instructions, there's a link here, but they're also embedded in the program. I would say that, and we'll show you that in a minute, there's a little question mark next to the questions. If you click on that, there'll be a little pop-up that'll show you the definition for that question. Frequently asked questions about the program. The federal data element definitions. When we log into the survey, you'll see some questions that appear in purple. Those are the federally required ones that every state has to ask on their survey. And then you'll see some that are in black. Those are the ones that we collect at the state level. Keep in mind that the purple ones, we're stuck with the federal definition, which can sometimes be confusing. So keep that in mind that if there's something about the definition, we can't change that, unfortunately. We can kind of offer a little bit more concise language. We try to do that with the programs because the federal definitions of the programs, when that changed was last year, the year before. I was very confusing. They used synchronous, asynchronous for programs. And we kind of thought that was confusing to most people, so we kind of changed that language around a little bit. There's the survey guide for each directors here. Flowchart for out of count electronic things. This was kind of an issue when there were a lot of electronic transfers. The good news is that if you're in the Overdrive consortium, most of you are, I think. Those numbers are pre-filled on your survey, both for the holdings and for your circulations. One of the changes next year is that we will no longer collect electronic holdings information. That was always problematic because a lot of those items are leased for a certain time period or a certain number of uses. So at best, it was kind of a snapshot of what was available to the consortium at a particular period of time. I think what is a little bit more beneficial is to know what you paid for the items and then how many times they were used, as opposed to that snapshot of time. If you have another vendor other than Overdrive, does anybody have? Columbus might have some vendors. So if you were wondering how to count those, there's a flow chart here that you can click on, and it'll, the first question is user authentication required, no or yes, and then you go through the flow chart that way, and that's how you probably determine. The key point with the electronic stuff is if it's permanently retained authentication, you kind of count it as a database. If it's not permanently retained, it's generally an ebook, audiobook, or video. That's kind of the general rule. Overdrive, like I said, we pre-fill those, but if you did want to know where we got the numbers for where Deborah, our technology and access services director, there's a guide here, like say maybe you want to pull those reports monthly, look at your data monthly, you can then, this will tell you how to get those numbers. And then Overdrive Advantage, does anybody have an Overdrive Advantage account in Columbus? Anybody else? Might not be applicable, but if you do have an Overdrive Advantage account, that would be great. Ebooks that you purchase locally just for your patrons at your library, or if you had an Advantage account where you purchase them and then share them back to the consortium, there's a guide here on how to get those numbers for your Advantage account. Questions off the top, or we'll log into the survey and go through the test. So once you get in, your screen should look something like this. You have your library name up here. Survey list is all these surveys. You won't be able to continue previous year's surveys. We'll just see this red icon. You can log in at any time and print your surveys for prior years. I think we have it going back to, well, according to this, 2001. If you want something prior, I'll send you an email, we have them on paper. If you're having trouble printing, you can always email me, we save a copy locally on our network too. I might always send you a copy of your survey from any prior year. The thing to keep in mind with the print icon is there's, I think, two buttons, one that says HTML and one that says PDF. PDF does not work, and I think there's something underneath it that says that it doesn't work. I don't know why they just don't remove, I think they're trying to fix it, apparently. I don't know why they don't remove it altogether until they get it fixed, but it will show up on there. Generally, what I do is print to HTML or select print to HTML and then save it to a PDF from there. Print to a PDF. So let's go ahead and continue this one here, and that'll log us into our survey. This is kind of the basic navigation here. The show status is basically for when you are done entering your data. You want to go and look at your status of your survey. There's basically three things that you need to watch out for. There's edit checks. So what edit checks are is this program looks at the data that you entered this year and compares it to what you entered last year. And it may look at like ratios of things on your survey. It may look at your revenue compared to your expenditures. Like say you reported $1 million of revenue, but you only reported $100 in expenditures. It's going to come up with an edit check that's going to say, what happened to that, all that other money that you had available? Did you miss something here? Or maybe it was an error. Sometimes you get an edit check if things are exactly the same. Like if your revenue doesn't change from the prior year. Having an edit check doesn't necessarily mean you won't be able to submit your survey. It just means that you need to enter a note explaining, why that data was outside of a certain range. Like in the revenue example, maybe you had carryover funds that you didn't spend. You can then put a note in the note field explaining that you had funds that you didn't spend, or carried over until next year. Or if your budget remained the same, it's as simple as entering a note that says our budget did not change this year. It's the same as last year. And then there's unanswered questions in the show status button. Actually, let me just click on that, I'll show you. So there's required unanswered questions, and then there's all the unanswered questions. If you have required unanswered questions that are blank, it's not going to let you submit the survey. You're going to either need to enter a 0 or NA, it's not applicable, or enter some value. And then finally, for your benefit, like when you're in the survey, say you were entering data and you remember that you needed to add some numbers to your total, you can flag a question and then it'll, when you go to submit it later on, it'll say, hey, you got a flag question. It's kind of a reminder for you to go back and add that. There's another print icon here. The submit button, that will be at the end once you get everything entered. Have no edit checks, no unanswered questions, no flag questions that you can then submit. And then there's a next button and a save button. There's also a next button and a save button at the bottom of the page. And one word on that, hitting next is supposed to save the data that's on the page. But I have a number of reports from libraries, and it's happened to me when I was in somebody's survey, where I was hitting next and it wasn't saving the data. I had somebody or a library entered all their data and they next throughout the entire survey and it can save. We had to go back in and re-enter it. I don't know if that's a bibliotheque glitch or obviously it's a glitch. So I would recommend people, it's never happened to me or anybody else reported if they hit save first and then next. So I would just recommend that you hit save, wait for the page to load and then go to the next page. And then hopefully you won't have that issue. You see up here in the right hand corner where it says hide last year's answers and show last year's answers. That's a nice feature because I almost always turn that on because you see here where it shows you what was entered last year. So that way you kind of know, most of the time you kind of have an idea of what was entered last year, and your data should vary a little bit from year to year, with the exception of those things like your revenue may stay the same. So that kind of gives you an idea, you know, if you're on the right track, if there's a large variance, you kind of think, well, that might trigger an edit check, so I'm not gonna double check that value. Here's an example of the federal questions, these are in purple. You'll notice here that the field is grayed out, that means it's locked. Generally, things like this do not change from year to year, that's why they're locked, because if somebody were to enter, FT instead of treat, that triggers an edit check. And we don't want those edit checks, but in your case, you've moved to a new location. And so what we'll need to do with those locked fields with you is, I have your address. When the survey launches, I'll go in and change your address. And then, what I'll need from you is your new square footage. Because that's also a locked field. So we'll go in and we'll change the address for you. If for some reason it doesn't appear, with the correct address, send me an email, I can go in as a survey admin and change that for you. Okay. The street address will change and then the square footage. Anybody else have any changes like that move to the location? If you do, email me. Or if your square footage is wrong, sometimes it's been reported, with one number for years and years and years, and the new director will come in and say, it's not right, it's not correct. So if it's incorrect, let me know, I'll go ahead and change it for you. Then we have to enter a code through IMLS when we submit our data to them showing the new location.
Sam, can that be changed through notes?
I would prefer that you just let me know. The note's not really gonna be any good, unless I went in and looked at your note and saw it and then changed it that way. So for I would say most people that doesn't change. If you had an outlet that closed, like Omaha was a big issue last year because they closed their downtown branch and they opened 2 new ones. We had to go in and do closure of the W. Park and then add the library administrative building, which is their temporary location. So yeah, just send me an email, it's easier to do it that way. Here's an example of flag question. Flag it that way. If it's something that you know that you're gonna get an edit check every year on, you can enter a note here on the fly. I usually tell people it's better to wait and see if you get an edit check than to enter more information in the note if they don't ask for it. But if it's a common thing, like some people have the same edit check every year and they know about it, you can always enter the note right here. And if it's a federal question in purple, I would always enter that note in the federal note field. If it's a question in black, that's a state question, enter it in the state note field here. The local notes are more just for your benefit. Say you struggled with getting some data this year and you finally found somebody at the city office and was able to get it for you. You can put that in the local note to call, you know, whoever at the city office for that next year, kind of as a reminder. And then, like I said, if it's common when you just copy and paste from the previous year into this year's note. We're gonna close that. Your library will be pre-populated, pre-filled population. One thing about population is sometimes we have questions about the numbers. We are required to use population figures from the state data center, which is the UNO Center for Public Affairs and Research, and they use ACF 5-year records. So that's the numbers that we will use on the survey. So your local population, like in the case of Columbus, I know you don't serve Platte County anymore, but at one time you did. Local population would be the pre-filled local population of Columbus City, and then the legal service area, if you serve the county, it would be the population of Platte County, for instance. And a few years ago that changed, so then we had to take your legal service area back to just the Columbus City because that interlocal agreement changed. If you have questions about population, let me know and I can pull back end spreadsheets. One thing to keep in mind is that sometimes the 5-year estimates change. We use them when they come out, the numbers that come out in, I think it's July, because of when our survey launches. Sometimes they will change your population, usually it's a slight change between that time period where they release that data, those data and end of the year. So if you go on the census, there might be a slight, difference in that. If there's a large difference, let me know. So normally, let's say if you're, since we're in the test survey, and we look care about saving your data, we just kind of things. Part two is kind of tricky because there's a lot of fields that are locked, pre-filled and locked. If you have a branch library or a bookmobile, you can see a 1 here. Most libraries don't have a bookmobile or branch location, so this is going to be a 0. You just have your one central library, central library location. You don't have a branch. The year the facility was built, some data about renovations and accessibility. We collect that primarily because, say when you were building your new facility here, you might want to contact libraries, like Crete used, I think, the same architects that Columbus did. So somebody in Columbus may have contacted Crete and said, ask them, hey, which architectural firm did you use, design firm, did you like them, or did you not like them? That way we can put libraries in touch with the libraries that are maybe doing a renovation. A lot of the questions here are going to be locked. You'll notice 2.10 to 2.20, and then a little break, and then 2.24 to 2.31. So you'll need to fill in 2.21, 2.22, and 2.23. 2.21 is number of bookmobiles in the bookmobile outlet record, with 0 in the shadow. 2.22 is the number of hours you're open per year. And does anybody have nobody has a branch location, right? Or bookmobile. So you'll see if you did, there's somebody on the recording that does have a branch location or bookmobile. You'll see 2 instances of those series of questions. You'll see one for the central library, like Columbus Public Library. Then, like, say you had a bookmobile, you would see another record for the bookmobile. It said Columbus Public Library, bookmobile, or whatever it was called. And then you would need to enter the hours for the Columbus Public Library, the physical location. And then you would need to also enter hours for the bookmobile. And then the other things like the square footage and all that sort of stuff. And then the number of weeks that you're open. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just looking at the hours, of open hours. It says minor variations.
Yep.
How minor?
So minor, it says minor variations need not be included. Extensive hours should be excluded. I generally tell people, we had this come up last week, there was a library, Holdridge Public Library. They had a broken air conditioner, and so they closed it early for a few weeks before in the summertime. They were normally open until 4, they closed at 2. That's a minor variation in hours. You close early or one day because of a snowstorm, that's a minor variation in hours. You close for the entire week or more than a week because you have a flood or a fire or a tornado. That's a natural disaster or another event that you would exclude from account. So with something like that, you would exclude those hours. If it's like closing early because of a snowstorm, you would just put that as normal hours. Does that answer?
Yeah.
I think those are the major ones. Sometimes people close early, maybe get a staffing issue, they close early one day or something like that. So that's a minor variation. I was going with those hours total.
Was it kind of the public library survey meeting workshop?
That would be, and you're open this afternoon when you leave here. Yeah. And again, even if you were gone for one day, I would still say that's a minor variation. I think what they're getting at is like libraries. Fire. Maybe have some. All of the expensive. And then 2.23, the number of, yeah.
So what if you close the library to patrons, but you're still doing all your services, they just put it kind of building like? Because
how
we did
long?
that, we closed for a month
For
to
a month.
move here, but we were still doing all, we did all the programming, we did,
So
we
you're
were still checking books
you're
out.
still open?
Yes.
You're still open, but people can't just come in and hours. They can do a whole, I would say, they can count those
Okay.
hours. Or you maybe offer a vestibule pickup or something.
Yeah, that's what we
Right
did.
through, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're still offering services, it's just that people can't come in, yeah, it's still have to do that hours. Number of weeks open. Good news this year is all those COVID questions about the weeks, limited occupancy and all that are gone. You don't have to worry about that. Thank God. Big years. Again, there's another thing here about natural disasters, it's the thing with the hours explanation. You notice here where it says add group and remove group. You'll see that throughout the survey. I'll get a better example of that is in the revenue part. The reason that it appears here is say you did have a bookmobile that you got. You would need to click on add group and then we need to enter all those codes for the bookmobile, like the name of the bookmobile and the hours of the all those codes that appear at the bottom. And then you see this question mark here, that's what I was talking about. If you click on that, it'll come up with that definition. So if you have a question about what to count, what not to count, and that doesn't appear on every question, but kind of the ones that might need a little more clarification, you can click on that and get more information about what to count and what not to count. And then we pick up in 2.24, these are the other locked ones. A lot of codes here. Geographic code changed. This is now aligned with census codes. For most people, it'd be like PL, which place is what the code is. Or if you serve the county, it would be like CO and then it's not interesting. So you'll notice down here in 2.31, this kind of looks like you just entered close first hours per year. The reason that it appears twice is because this just sums what you entered up above. And if you just have that one physical library location, you don't have a bookmobile or branch location, it's gonna be the same. If you have a bunch of branches, like Lincoln has 7 branch locations and a bookmobile. They enter the hours for each branch location and it sums it, that sums the total for the entire. You'll need to click on save for this to, you can't just click in the open space here because that's a repeating group. So you'll have to click on save for this to appear up here. But in a lot of questions, if you enter something that requires a total, you can just click in open space, it should calculate the total for you. Library finance in part 3, your fiscal year should be pre-filled with what you entered last year. So in this case, their fiscal year ended September 30th, 2022. It picks up October 1, 2022, and runs through September 30th, 2023. Most fiscal years are either October 1 through September 30th, that's the federal fiscal year, or July 1 through June 30th, that's the state fiscal year. We have a few of them that are calendar year. Not too many, but a few run January through December. And then a couple of odd ones, like Lincoln's runs September 1 through August 31st. Kind of like close to the middle of this year. At a library last year that the fiscal year was reported incorrectly for a number of years. So we needed to change that. That's going to trigger an edit check because you can see the overlap. It's something like that. You can enter a note that says that it was incorrectly entered last year or it wasn't correct. It'll trigger an edit check that will fix the overlap. For revenue, you report, kind of general rule is you report funds that are available to you, not necessarily what you spent. And this is not an accounting program where your revenue has to exactly match your expenditures. And if you try and do that, in fact, if it does, that may trigger an edit check because it's very unusual that you're not actually have to carry over. So you report the funds that are available to you, but generally those are nice round numbers. Like the budget of $12,000 or $10,000, whatever it may be. So you report what you receive from the city or the village. Township, if you receive money from the township, you report that here, and then, you'll notice here on the ad group, remove group, here's a good example. We were in Grand Island, I was at Grand Island last week. And we just made up an example that this particular test library got money from the Grand Island Township. $200, and then Denise Carter Special Collections. But Denise Carter Township received $300, and you can enter as many of these as you want. You just click on that add group, and you'll see another instance of 3.4 and 3.5 come up. Then in the township name, this is more common with counties, they will see more county. Township, but it does happen. And then if you click on it, that's simply just click on remove group. So here's the county name, again, it's just like the township, enter county name, and then the amount that you receive from that county.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
We have a very strange situation. The county gives money to our friends of the county, and the city will not let us report that as finance because they want to do it directly to them. So how does that get reported?
So does the friends group that turn around and give it to you.
The friends group buys all.
Generally, it would be reported. But if you've always been reporting it from the friends, you can.
Okay, so we can actually report from the friends.
You can, but the correct way to do it would be, since it wasn't the store,
It's the county.
since the friends did the pass through, I would report it as county. And if you're accredited, I don't know if the amount's large, if your library is accredited, you get a 1%. Payment. All funds that come from the county. So if you receive state aid and your library is accredited, you get a lot of money from the county. You know, that could translate to a larger state aid check because there's a 1% incentive for any public funding that's not with the city.
Okay.
The states. And the only exception to that is like libraries like I think Valentine is one example that receives all of their funding from the county because they serve all of Cherry County. They don't receive any money from the city of Valentine. So that's the only thing that would make you ineligible. Do you have a question, Tammy?
I was gonna ask how it's been reported in the past. Has it been documented?
It has not because the city will not let us. Because they feel that that money should go to them, not to the friends. They were the whole thing boiled down to the county wanted them to guarantee that the library would get money to spend on books, and they refused. So the county said, no, then we're gonna give it to the friends and they'll give it. And that made me,
They have to agree, county have to agree with. They agree with friends, you were saying, this is what we'll spend on it.
yeah,
Whereas the
there
friends,
may have been a,
to the city might use it for some.
yeah,
So if she records it this year and did last year, she should probably put a note explaining why.
You could,
It's
yeah,
documented.
yeah. This was reported, this was reported as added revenue this last year and incorrectly, something like that.
and they reviewed, the county or the city reviewed it, and if that's in there, they will.
Yeah.
I guess it would be.
Other local government revenue, this is really rare. To be like if you receive, there's another government agency other than the city that gave you money, just put the agency here. The name of the agency and then the amount. Most people, that's an NA and a 0. If you see blanks like this, you can always enter an NA and a 0. Usually when I review your survey after you submit it, and if you have a blank like that, I'll go in and put an NA and a 0, just clean it up a little bit. But if you go ahead and put that in there, that way I know that you've read the question, you understand it, and it should have been a 0. So then you'll have a total, anytime that we can have the business staff do math for us, we like to have it do math and not us do math. And so you'll notice here that this question is in purple. So IMLS only wants to know the total local government revenue. We want to know kind of a breakdown of where it came from. And then this is just the sum of that. State government revenue, your library state aid, if you receive state aid through us, if you're accredited, that number will be pre-filled for you. If your library is not accredited, and you do the survey online, you are eligible for a $200 grant from us called Dollars for Data. Because that is the first step in to become accredited, is to submit your data to us. So that's kind of an incentive to do it. We have some libraries that don't want to be accredited, but they like to do it online for $200. That's perfectly fine too. But if your library was unaccredited and you wanted to move towards accreditation, that's kind of an incentive to do it online. Continuing education training grants, I think that's what you were submitting. And then other state government revenue, that would be like, I think the common one would be like an internship grant. Those two grants use state funds. The other two grants, we'll get in a minute, use federal funds, the library improvement grant, and then the youth grants for excellence. Those use federal LSTA money. The continuing education, the training grant, and the internship grants use state funds. We don't pre-fill those, kind of because I don't generally know when you receive the funding. I think a lot of the time it comes as a reimbursement, so maybe in one fiscal year or the other fiscal year, you're kind of in a better position to know when you got that reimbursement. So we kind of leave it up to you. If you have questions about like when you can get paid, you can always contact Holly Duggan, the internship grants, and then for library improvement grants, that's Krista. And then the youth grants is Sally Snyder. Always contact one of those people if you did get a grant that want to know when you pay. Federal government revenue, again, this would be your library improvement grant, youth grants. 3.17 is another federal grant source. In 3.17, you enter the description of where the funds came from, and then 3.18 is the dollar amount, kind of like that county revenue where you enter the description and the amount. This is where you enter all those ARPA grants within here. It looks like ARPA, you know. Since those were all done now, somewhat unusual to get a federal grant, but I think USDA is one of the common ones, common federal grants that are out there. National Science Foundation, I think, has something to do that they're now. So if you receive a grant, like in this case from the USDA, you just enter USDA grant, however you want to describe it, and then say it was $500, you just send $500. And again, if you receive multiple grants from federal sources, you can put on that group and itemize each one. So then you see some total federal government revenue. In this case, I had that $500 grant that I entered. Lender compensation. Does anybody participate in lender comp? Columbus. You. So if you're participating in that program, you would report what you received during your fiscal year. If you don't know, you can click on this little question mark here, and it'll take you to the link that has those reports, their quarterly reports right here. You would just need to pull all 4 of them for your fiscal year, and then add those 4 up to report it for the year. So we will then pull this up, and this actually has, over here on the right, OCLC loans are reimbursed now at a rate of $5.60 per loan. Like Auburn, for instance, they did 50 of those and they got reimbursed $280 within this quarter. What you'll see over here on the Overdrive loans, this is for Overdrive Advantage libraries that purchase ebooks or audiobooks on their own and then share them back to the consortium. You can do that and you can reimburse them 15 cents. So if you participated in that, you can want to add that to compensation as well. Let's see that Columbus. But Columbus had both. You had in this quarter, you had $810 in Overdrive Advantage loans, and you had 50 OCLC. You would have those both up in that for the other 3/4, usually when their competition paid. Regional library system grants, if you got money from county for any reason, they put that at 3.21. Sometimes grants are on the attend a conference or reimbursement for something. You put that at 3.21, and then 3.22 and 3.23, that's kind of the other category. A lot of the time this would be where you enter Dollar General grants, other private sources, yeah.
What if you got a small grant, but it wasn't a monetary amount, it was like, free product?
Yeah, and you don't know the value of that product.
Well, they gave us a dollar amount, that it wasn't funds, it was promotional material.
Yeah, I think the key question there is this little highlighted part there is that the county. Services, what value would be non-monetary. If the donations, then that public.
Is that where I would put like the Nebraska Historical Society along with that?
That would go into the state part, of the state certificate agency, yeah, you would put that into state revenue, you just split it in the description, historical society grant or whatever. And this would be more for like private grants. Then you'll see a bunch of totals, the other revenue, the total operating revenue. Capital revenue, we'll notice here the great big long definition. Kind of general rule is capital revenue, like when you were building your new library, you probably got that the city probably allocated additional funds for the building. So yeah, it's like the way it's described as a major one-time project. So like say you got an insurance settlement and you had major roof damage and you replace the entire roof. That's a major one-time project. Say you already had a room, then you just replace the carpet. That's probably not a major one-time project, that's just maintenance of something that you already have. If you added on to the library, built on it, or built a new library, that would be generally capital revenue. It does mention furnishings, equipment, and additional collections. That's more for, say you built a new building. Say you built a new building and equipped it with all new computer lab. That would be, you would report that as capital revenue. If you just replace computers that were already in the computer lab, that wouldn't be, you would report that as capital. And then you'll see, you know, what was the source of the capital revenue? Did it come from the local government? Did it come from the state, federal, or other, like private donation? Say you got a private donation from a local entrepreneur. You just put it under the other section, came from another source. There's the capital expenditures section. When we get to the expenditures, the thing to keep in mind there is sometimes capital revenue, well, most of the time it doesn't, capital revenue doesn't match the expenditures. Sometimes you get the capital revenue in 1 year. I noticed this with like Crete Public Library, they were doing fundraisers. 3 months, another example there, you know, they're raising funds for their new library. They got those funds this year. They would report them on this year's survey, and then they're not gonna expend those maybe for another year or two. So then the expenditure will show up on 2 years down the road. I think they turned all the edit, that used to trigger an edit check. I think they turned those on because we kept telling them the whole thing about a major one-time expenditure is just one time, you know, so it's not like it recurs to your question.
I do, we participate in Boone County Big Give every year.
I'm sorry, say that again.
We participate in Boone County Big Give every year.
Okay.
And it's like we raise funds and then the Boone County Foundation matches the funds. And so like this year, we got over $4,000 that we used to replace the seat mats on our patio.
Okay.
But considered a
I
capital.
would say that's a capital project.
Okay.
So you would report in other capital, you report $4,000 a year. And if you wanted to, you could put a note, it's not gonna trigger an check, but if you wanted to put a note in here, you could put replace. Um. It's a one-time project. We have replaced this. Does your library charge a non-resident fee? Just yes or no? If yes, who is charged? Here's an example of this doesn't change from year to year, you just copy and paste from there. And then individual fee, household fee, and the number of cards you issued during the year. Operating expenditures, for this section, you report what you actually spent. So in the revenue part, that's your budget, those are the funds that are available to you. Expenditures are you report what you actually expended during the fiscal year. Generally speaking, with some exceptions, these are not nice round numbers because it's unusual for you to expend the exact same extra salaries and wages. It would be unusual for you to spend the exact same amount that you did last year. Probably gonna trigger another check with the case. One thing that doesn't change from year to year is your overdrive. If you're in the overdrive consortium, that's always $500. Used to trigger another check for everybody, we turned it off. And so now, shouldn't get the edit check, and then when we finalize our data and clean it up and send it by MLS, we just take our Excel file and we just put that same note for everyone that says overdrive consortium fee has not changed. It's $500. For employee benefits, here you include social security withholdings and FICA. Very unusual for that to be a zero. The only instance that I can think of is, I think if you're paid as an independent contractor for one person library, paid as an independent contractor, and then withholding, it's unusual that those possible. Sometimes we get because librarians say, but I'm not paid that will include the whole things. Then we have check marks here for benefits for the library director. We do collect salary information at the end of the survey for the library director. We have a lot of requests from one community that wants to look at what salary of the director is. By the community. Maybe they're doing a salary analysis. It's important to know that because one librarian may get paid a higher hourly rate, but they don't get paid any benefits. So these are just check marks. If you have paid health insurance, check life insurance, so on and so forth, the common ones here. And then there's another category, if there's something that's not covered, you generate it in the field here. Collection expenditures, you report what you spent on your collection. So library materials in print format, that's 3.50. 3.51 is the electronic format. For most people, that's going to be the overdrive 500. Columbus, you need to add what you spent for databases. If you had overdrive advantage titles, spend money on that. On people to add those to it. And then the other materials, basically to catch all anything else. This does include CDs, DVDs. It would include any other items that were purchased too, like say you circulated toys or games, stuff like that. Whatever you spend for those would be, you'd add that to the total 3.52. And then 3.53 is just the total collection expenditures. And we have another operating expenditures category. IMLS only wants to know the total, but we kind of have a breakdown. I think a lot of these track with the, some of them track with the accreditation applications to get certain points for certain expenditures. I know continuing education, if we expended anything with continuing education, you get like 3 points, I think, for that on the accreditation application. Computer hardware, accessories, and software. You would also include printers in this total. 3.55 electronic access. That is where you enter your OPAC or ILS fees. So you had biblionics for your ILS. or Follett or whatever your ILS is, and they charge you a yearly. You would enter that in 3.55. Also, in 3.55 is where you include, I'll highlight it here. Anything paid to your ISP, anything paid associated with access to the internet is in 3.55. E-rate, if you receive E-rate, usually that comes as a discount. Usually the funds don't pass through you. It just comes in the form of a discount to your ISP. So you would just enter whatever, like say you had an 80% discount and you only pay 20% to that ISP. You would put it under, put that 20% under electronic access. You don't include the higher amount of your discount, because the funds don't actually pass through. It comes in the form of discount. Sometimes that's common. If it did pass through you the entire amount, which would be rare, you'd report it under 3.57 here, which would be points. This is kind of a catch-all. We used to have you itemize all this stuff, facility, utilities on display, insurance contracts and services. We really care what itemization is for us. But then you have to add everything up and just throw it in there. Contracts for services, we get questions about that sometimes. That would be like, say you had a lawn service or snow removal, elevator maintenance contract, something like that. Sometimes there's cleaning contracts for services. Other times they're paid employees of the library. It's a service, you report them in miscellaneous. If the paid employee, you report it as a staff expenditure.
Okay,
Yeah.
we had that problem. Would that be under,
So yeah, pest control person come in.
yes,
Yeah, that would be miscellaneous.
okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, if you could go back, did you say we don't, so our E-rate does not pass through us, we just get the discount?
Yeah.
So we don't report that number?
Right, so whatever you pay that's not covered by E-rate, if you have like probably 20 or 30% of your bill that you pay, you report that in 3.55, right? But that 70% that E-rate pays for that you doesn't show up on your bill, you don't report. Okay. And then 3.60 is total capital expenditures, so kind of track with that capital revenue. Again, this probably is not going to match. It would, like, say you got an insurance settlement for $10,000 to replace your roof. You have damage, and you got the money. You're going to replace the roof. You can spend all that money. Then it would show up on the same year before. So let's get through the library questions part, and then usually that's a good time to take a 5-minute break and then come back to the rest of it. Library collections, none of this changed from last year, although there will be changes next year. So keep that in mind. You'll see a common pattern here, like with books. The 4.1, this will be pre-filled with whatever your ending number was prior year here. So whatever you had for last year's books that were held at the end of the fiscal year, that will be your starting number for this year's report. And then you'll see this will look the same for everything else. You just enter the number you added during the year and the number you hated during the year, and then we'll calculate the total. Say we added 100, this goes up to 12,200. Say we did 200. That'll be around 20. Electronic books, again, if you're in the overdraft description, that will be pre-filled for you. This is the one that will go away next year, because we're no longer collecting old numbers. So you won't see this on next year's survey. Good news is this year is pre-filled, if you're in the consortium. This number here, 4.5, will be pre-filled based upon your fiscal year. So if that's like what you want, just turn period or July 1 to June 30th. We'll just need to add, if you had anything that was held in another consortium, There are still, if any of you work in the central digital co-op, or how many lenders are, wherever. That kind of went away, but those holdings were purchased like indefinitely. And so now those are part of the overdrive collection. So you may see, if you were in that consortium at one time, you may see a number in 4.6 here. That's what that is. Those were the central digital co-op books, ebooks that were purchased. And then,
Right.
4.7 is where you would enter your overdrive advantage if you have an overdrive advantage account. And then total here. Audio physical units, it should look the same, your CD, playaways, if you have those. Just enter the number you added, number you deleted. And then audio downloadable units, audio units that will be pre-filled as well. They'll look exactly the same. Held as another consortium, and if you have an overdrive advantage account here. And then from the video. So, starting number, or the added number. And video downloadables. I think overdrive, I think last year there were a few, 3 or 4 in the consortium. I think that this year there's no. We would just enter 0. Sales subscriptions, this would be like where you would report your subscriptions to newspapers and magazines. This used to be a federal question, and then they voted to remove it. We kept it on the survey just because we thought it was kind of important to look at trends. You know, is everybody getting rid of their print? Because we get questions sometimes. I'm sure you do, Tammy, too, maybe. Well, you can actually go to data. Pull up the libraries that still have subscriptions, or maybe look at the trend over a period of time. Now, the state level is interesting to know how it's changed over the last 5 years. Having said that, I would like to ask. And then the other materials kind of catch-all, kind of tracks with that other materials expenditures. We talked about public games, take pans. Basically anything else that circulates to the public, that you have in the collection. So you would just enter the description here. So say you had multiple things, say you did have puzzles and games, arcade pans. Just separate it by comma. Puzzles. Games. Say the Chromebooks that left the library circulated to the public in Chromebooks. Hotspots. And if you're running out of space, you have a lot of stuff. You can always just put the notes. And then just center it on. That's not limited by number of characters. Sometimes people enter the major ones, but you know, like if you could enter the category. So the number you added and we do. And you'll see a bunch of totals here, and the reason that these are state questions. This kind of primarily for the accreditation application, there's like a weeding percentage. Kind of meant to calculate that. But also exclude the electronic holdings because they don't include that in the weeding part. Allocate next year, we'll include the electronic stuff. So then you have the total here, total physical items in the collection. And then I think total collection. We added this last year about non-circulating items. Basically, these are things that are maybe checked out from the reference desk for in-house use. Common ones like headphones, microphones. Sometimes Chromebooks are checked out for just in-house use. You go through the circulation desk, can actually take it from the library. You would then just enter the description here in 4.38. And then if you knew how many times they were used, you could put that. Video games, another one. How those are checked out and start that. Libraries want to count that. So we thought we added as a question. But I think this library service, we'll probably like 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, maybe, and then we'll come back and, clean up the rest.
I remember to record it again.
Let's go and get started. Anybody think of any questions from the previous parts? No? Yeah.
When it says like the service area, if you, what does that exactly mean? Is it like if they are able to get a library card for free, like in Strasburg,
Right.
Cook County? If you're a Cook County resident, you can get a library card, and then if you are a family of cross county students, so we go into York County, the Benedict, in Strasburg, or.
That's a big question. So generally, it's gonna be pre-filled with whatever your, city or village population is. The only way that we would expand that to that county is if there's an interlocal agreement between the city and the county. And generally, that's tied into some funding. Like generally, it's like, well, any resident of the county can use, like, that's what happened in Columbus. They had an interlocal agreement between Columbus and the city in Platte County, where Platte County residents, I think they had football stop in the county too, but any Platte County resident could use the library. Well, the county pulled it funding,
Okay.
and so that agreement then went away, and then that population is down. But we have some libraries that just let anybody in the county use the library. In a situation like that, technically you serve them, but if there's no interlocal agreement in place, then
Okay.
we probably don't include that in the population.
Does that count for schools too?
What do you mean?
Well, Bancroft, Rosalie Schools has an agreement with the library. Yeah,
So
anyway,
if that population is outside of the city of Bancroft, and you served another, like, we deal with like townships, there's a few that serve multiple townships, so what we do in situations like that is we count up the population of each township and then add that, so if that was in your circumstance, we can go and look at the population.
even across the county.
Yeah, even if they're in a different, because Rosalie's in Preston County. So we're in.
You know, if there's an interlocal agreement that
Yeah,
there is,
yes, do I like it? No.
okay. And are we including the population now?
I don't think so.
So that may be something that we want to look at.
Well, you and Jody can look at that.
Give me a call
Okay.
and we'll,
Well, unless we can get it changed back.
we'll,
You don't care though that we share our books with anybody, right?
no.
Okay.
We're right next to Platte County, we do the same thing. I mean, I have almost as many Platte County families from Lindsay coming in and go. But we don't have outrage. Oh, I just.
Well, and sometimes, you know, the large revenue changes like that, like I know in Columbus, that had a big effect on your state aid because not only did your population go down to the formula, it's like we're not counting that entire population in the formula, but then also that 1%, you know, we talked about, since you didn't receive county funding, that 1% went away. So it could potentially affect your state aid. Population increases generally affect your state aid in that you get more, but then sometimes you pay more for overdrive because your population goes up. So a lot of the time, if it's a larger community, it's generally a wash.
As far as card holders, yes. But,
Registered borrowers, but
yes,
not population.
we're not.
So in 5.1 is where you enter the registered borrowers. They do recommend that you purge your files every 3 years. Of course, you can do that more frequently than that. That's just what I will recommend. Library visits can be a tricky one. If you have a door counter, if you don't have a door counter, where the door counter is located was what was that? Grand Island, I think they had 2 door counters. our festival had 2 door counters, they had one at the main door, and then the restroom. And another one going to the library. So obviously they would get different door counts. Based upon if they was in the library and they came up to the and came up. If you don't have a door counter, you go to just do an estimate based upon an average week. I generally recommend that you, if possible, you do an estimate based upon an average week during 4 different seasons, like an average week in the summer, an average week in the spring, fall, winter. Don't do it on a week where major event in the libraries, say the governor's coming to visit the library or something. Don't do that, because that may have an effect one way or the other. Or like if you have a snowstorm, that could affect your it's kind of an average week, and then multiply it with 4 by average amount, and multiply by 52 to get the annual number. And then here you'll notice that they added these questions, a lot of these follow-up questions last year, you'll see this for a lot of them. They want to know the number that you entered up here, is that an actual count or estimate? It's okay to have it be an estimate, they just want to know, do you have a door counter or are you estimating this based on average week? Same thing with reference transactions, you'll see reference transactions, you enter the number here and then is it a count or an estimate? If you pull up this definition, it's rather longish thing that nobody really reads. One thing to keep in mind is this first part, actually the first paragraph. What's to count as a reference transaction? These are consultations where library staff recommends, interprets, evaluates, or uses information and resources to help a patron. Kind of the general rule here is you don't include what they call directional transactions. Examples of directional transactions would be if I came in, Tammy was working the reference desk, I came in and said, Tammy, where's the restroom? Over there. How late are you open? I'm fine. That's a directional transaction. Or where's your nonfiction section? Over there. That's a directional transaction. Now, if I came in and said, Tammy, I'm doing some genealogy research. Do you have any resources that could help me? And Tammy knows that the library has My Heritage and says, yeah, let me show you how to use My Heritage over here on this computer. You would count that as a reference transaction. If I came in and said, I really like books by this particular author, can you recommend something else that's similar? You would count that as a reference transaction because she's making a recommendation. If I just came in and said, where's the romance books, that's the direction. Those are kind of the general, like count with non-counts. An interaction may be 2 reference transactions, depending on you may start with. I'm working on this book report. Here's a resource to recommend. And then also I may pull out my phone and say, oh, and by the way, I'm having trouble with the overdrive app. Can you help me with that? That's another reference. Use of the public internet computers, you enter that here. You would include, we talked about like Chromebooks that circulate in house, you would include that. You have a tablet, you like an iPad that circulated in house, you would do that, you would report that here as well. Again, is it an actual count or an estimate? And then we have circulation. There's a slight change, I think, that occurred last year to this that we'll go over in a minute. In 5.8, you would enter your circulation of adult materials, CDs and DVDs. Sometimes it's tricky to know what to count as an adult item and what to count as a children's item because the children's circulation is the next part. Generally, that's a judgment call on your end. You realize some things are difficult. Is this DVD a children's DVD or adult DVD? don't count it twice. So if you included it as children's, circulation, don't also count it as an adult circulation. Pick one category. I would say, however, it's catalog. It's catalog as a children's item, kind of children's circuit, you can do that from your ILS. The overdrive stuff will be pre-filled for you. You pull that ahead of time, pre-filled. If you have another vendor, you'll have to add to that. 5.11 is the circulation of children's. And notice that this just includes books, audio physical units, which would be CDs, and video physical units. But we used to count those other items, you know, like I said, cake pans, bubbles, games, all that. We used to count those in categories, adult or children's. Now we have the other category for circulation. So for those other items, the items that you reported in the holding, or other cake pans, so on and so forth, you report those circulations in 5.14, which is total annual circulation of other physical items. I know it's kind of tricky because, you know, before we had that other category, it's just got added to the survey. It's a national question. We used to count cake pans as adult circulations. Now you separate those out and put them in the category. And then have a few totals here: total physical circulation, use of electronic materials, that's your children's electronic and adult. And then total circulation of library materials right here. Again, they did that. Electronic collections, the federal definition calls these electronic collections, we call them databases. Generally, these are things that are permanently retained by the patron. You don't count Nebraska Access, that's pre-filled for you. So if you don't subscribe to any other databases other than Nebraska Access, you don't need to do anything to center zeros. If you have another vendor though, you would enter, like say you had a subscription to newspapers.com and ancestry.com. You would put a 2 here because that's the total number of databases that you fund locally, pay for locally. And then in here in 5.19, you would just describe those. So in this example, you would put ancestry.com and then a comma and then newspapers.com. Just like that. And then if you know the number of times those were used, you can report it here in 5.20. Sometimes that's tricky based upon the vendor, sometimes they don't have the reports that indicate the use. If you know, go ahead and enter that in 5.20. And then 5.21, that's the Nebraska Access. So we have 28 databases now in Nebraska Access. That would be pretty cool. And you'll notice a bunch of total license databases that Nebraska Access plus any that we have locally. It's 28 plus the 2 that we entered above, so 30. And then electronic content used, that total database used plus electronic circulation. And then total collection used, that's kind of everything. And for interlibrary loan, 5.25 and 5.26, you enter the total materials that you loan to another library. And 5.26 is borrowed from. The thing to note for borrowed from is you include the book club kit borrowing here, and you count the total number of items in the kit, not just like one for the title, even though they're the same title. Like if you borrowed a book club kit from Tammy that had 10 physical books, copies of the same book in it, that would count as 10 interlibrary loans. Some people would count it, they would just count it as one title. Nebraska card registrations, if you participate in that lending program, just add a number here. If you have an Overdrive Advantage account, and you share your titles back through to the consortium, you would enter yes here. If you don't share them, if you have Overdrive Advantage local titles, if you don't share them back, you can enter no. Or NA if you don't participate in Overdrive. And we have the option here, oh, yeah,
You were a part of that consortium? Did you say yes there? Is all of that stuff is
with the consortium, the Central Digital.
with Control Digital?
So that, those circulations are gonna be pre-filled in the electronic circulation category. You want
But do we say yes that we're sharing? Because those are shared?
no, this is only Overdrive Advantage, like stuff that you purchased on your own, not
Okay.
from the consortium. And then share it back. So. And then you can report the number of times those were used by another library, so if you click on this question mark, that'll then take you back to that lender comp report. And so, when we pull that example of the address, they would report that they had for this quarter, they would have for all 4 quarters, 6,953 accounts. So, items that they share that. But no, you wouldn't enter the Central Digital stuff there. Kind of gives you credit for showing that, yes. Programs that people remember this last year, if you like this last year. The program section. With major changes that happened, that national definition about synchronous, asynchronous. We tried to clean it up a little bit, make it a little bit simpler, hopefully. I'll try and explain it maybe in a simpler way. We left the total definition here if you want to read through this. There's one page of just definitions. We have these categories now. So that's the whole federal definition. The thing to keep in mind with programs, kind of the way we describe it, we have 2 sections. For programs, we have 2 sections for program attendance. The first section is programs by age category. So if you'll notice here, we have the number of programs targeted towards age 0 to 5. So these are programs where your targeted audience would be pre-K. That can be tricky. Maybe you have a children's program that's kind of targeted towards 0 to 12. Again, you have to pick a category. It's either 0 to 5 or 6 through 11. Who's the program that does don't count them twice. So if you have one program that's kind of a story time that it's kind of geared towards all kids, kind of want to pick one that's, is it more geared towards the pre-K crowd or is it more geared towards the 6 to 11 crowd? And then report it there. So in this example, we reported 2 pre-K programs. And this includes live programs like in the library, virtual programs, on-site programs, or off-site programs. So wherever the program was still started towards 0 to 5 to calendar year.
About story, when you read to a preschool, you go to a preschool, you read to them.
So you would count that here because that's off-site program.
But if you do it every week, would it be different?
Yep, it would be, yeah, so if it's the same program every week. And I think if you pull up the definition, it talks about recurring programs. So it's the same program every week. Yeah, you count it as 52 programs. Lisa, and then you.
We have a meeting room next door to us. It's not ours, but we always do our summer reading program in there because it's big and empty and the city doesn't care. So that would be off-site.
That would be an off-site program.
Okay.
You would also count it as in the age category part.
I would what?
You count it as an age, is the targeted audience 0 to 5 or 6 to 11?
Yeah, in there.
So you pick 0 to 5 or 6.
Well, it goes.
Yeah,
You said this is virtual. I'm starting I read a book once a week. Would that go into this?
so it's a live virtual program. It's not like a recording that you then put up on your website, but people can zoom in while you're reading the book.
No, I record it and then I put it on our Facebook
Okay,
page.
that's different. You don't count that as a program. It's counted as a program presentation.
Oh,
And we'll go over that one. It's confusing. Yeah.
okay, we do a weekly, English class for our non-English speaking folks in town. so the class is geared toward the adults, but they bring their kids with, and I do a little thing with the kids while the adults are in class. So I count that as each week as one adult program and one kids program.
I would, because the adult program is the class that they're putting on, and you're doing the program. It is, so I would count that as two programs. One adult program, and then you count it as either 0 to 5 or 6 to 11.
It's not counted, but
I would
it's
count
counted as the
I
adult.
would count it as two, yeah. So in this example, we had 2 6 to 11 programs. And then, 3 12 through, and then counts the total number of children's programs. That's 4. We have 2 pre-K and 2 6 to 11, but 4 total children's programs. And then for young adults, say we had 3. Count 3 here. For adults, say we had 3 more. And then we have this catch-all category now that's general interest. This is like if you can, if you don't know, it's, pull up the definition. This gives some examples like all age, all library, family programs, intergenerational programs. It gives some examples here like family game nights, holiday events. Storytelling programs that maybe appeal to kids and adults. The chess club, that's intergenerational. If you don't know what category to put something, you can always throw it in. It's kind of nice having that because that way if you don't know, a lot of libraries are doing these types of programs now, so it's in general interest. Yes,
Okay, so there, under programs, are you including? Because we have community rooms that, are used in the library, but not library hosted. Like we have a Girl Scout troop. The library is the location, but it's not,
it's not a library
library.
sponsored program.
Yeah,
So you don't count it as a program. There's another section, we'll get to that in a minute, where you can count meeting rooms. It would count as a meeting, it's by an outside organization. As the library participated in that program, marketed it, and did, had staff, available for it, then we would count it. But what you're talking about is more of a meeting room, it's not outside of the meeting. So then in 5.36 on the here, we have the total programs, that's the sum of everything that we have here, it's 12. Okay. We have 3 follow-up questions. Then keep in mind with the follow-up questions, what it's asking is, out of these 12 programs that you entered by age category, how many of them were held on site in the library or on the library grounds? All your programs were held in the library or outside in the yard or the on the library grounds? You would just put a 12 here and a 0 for the others, and you're good to go. If you had, like in your case, you had one off-site, you would then count that in the off-site category. So say you had 10 in this example that were held in the library or on the library grounds, and then one that was off-site. That story time in preschool or nursing time. We count that as an off-site program. And then if you did the story time live via Zoom, that would count as a live virtual program. We would count that there. And then you'll notice here that we have another total. What you need to pay attention to is that this total number of programs held by where they were held needs to match the total number by age. If it doesn't, it won't let you submit the survey. Those need to be, in this case, 12 by age category, 12 by where they were held. Does that make sense? Because I know it's tricky.
yeah.
If you need to go in and look at your survey, I can usually tell you what's going on. A lot of people got edit checks last year because they were trying to get those numbers to match, and it's tricky. But that's one way of looking at it is, so like out of these total 12 by age category, how many of them are on-site, off-site, or virtual? Like I said, the best case scenario is all of them are at the library, just having the same number. Okay? Then program attendance, this is gonna kind of mirror that other section. You're gonna have the program attendance by age category, and then you're gonna have the program attendance by were they on site, were they off site, or were they virtual? Tricky part there is you could have a on-site program with virtual attendees. Looks like, say some people were on Zoom today. We would count this as a on-site program. If then for the attendance, we would count everybody that's attending live in the live on-site attendance, and then the virtual people would be counted as virtual. The total would get counted by age category. So if this was an adult program, we would count the total attendance in adult. If they had 20 people live and 2 people virtual, for the adult program attendance, we would count 22 in adults. And then for the on-site virtual, we would count 20 on-site and 2 virtual. That makes sense. So for program attendance, it's even trickier yet, because you count, if you had that pre-K program, you count it as a 0 through 5 targeted program. For the attendance, you count everybody that shows up for that targeted 0 through 5 program, regardless of their age. So if you had that pre-K story time, you had 10 toddlers show up, and adults came with them. Say you had 5 older kids that came with their younger brother or sister. You would count 10 toddlers. You count 10 adults, it's 20, and then 5 older kids, 25. So you would count 25 for program attendance at programs that were targeted towards age 0 to 5. The key thing here is you don't have to go out and ask everybody how old they are. It shows the program, just count everybody. It shows up for the program that you've targeted towards all that. It's simple. So you have the same age categories, young adult, and then the general interest. And then you have a total there of program attendance by age, by targeted age category. And you'll see those 3 follow-up questions here. How many of the attendees were on-site, off-site, and virtual? So again, if everybody was on-site and in person, it's at the same number. 0 for the other 2. So in this instance, 5.46, your total program attendance by age also needs to match total program attendance by where they attend. Doesn't won't be able to see your survey for and check it. If you're having problems with this, leave me look at it, I can log in and look at it. The other thing that might trigger an edit check, I think it does trigger an edit check, is if you enter, we had this happen a few times last cycle. We had one library that entered, they had 2 offsite programs. And then for offsite program attendance, they had 0. It's like, well, what? And we then come to find out they had 2 offsite programs, but nobody showed up. So it was correct. We just need to enter a note saying we held 2 offsite programs.
Would that count against us if that happened?
No, you just need to enter a note. Yeah,
Okay, thank
all
you.
kinds. Frustrating numbers. Second time, first time that we showed up, we had to. So here's your recorded program presentations. So the thing here is they use, IMLS uses the language program presentations, but they're not counted as programs. That makes sense. So this would be like in your case, you would count, you had 1 story time that you put up, you recorded and then put on your website, and then in 5.51, if you can, like say it's on YouTube and you have a way of getting that data, or on on Facebook or something, if you have a way of getting the number of views, how many times that was used, number of times that was viewed within 30 days after the presentation was posted. And this definition actually says to count the views within 30 days after you posted, even if that extends past your fiscal year. So if you posted something at the end of September, like September 28th, in the fiscal year, and then September 30th, you would then count total number of views 30 days to October 28th, or April, whatever it is. And then report that.
The numbers in huge.
Could be huge.
Posted a video last week, it has already 300 views on it. Our population is 300.
Spider, spider, maybe.
You'll never know, it's just a book that I read and it ended up blowing up on Facebook.
So that huge number gets reported.
It just about gave me a heart attack.
Well, it would encourage you to keep moving. And then because this started out, the first definition for this was at 7 days, I'm going to change it to 30. So we had 1 year data with 7 days, 30. 7 didn't really adequately capture it, so the state voted to change it to 30. We got a little pushback of Black Camp County from some library thing, Black Camp County for the whole year. So we added it as a state question here. If you want to report that to the full state, obviously, if you post it, you know, I said at the end of this video. But you have the option to report it to the whole state. And we also added, we added self-directed activities. We had a lot of people that wanted to count self-directed activities. These aren't programs, these aren't counted as programs. But the self-directed activities, there's some examples here. Kind of a common thing that libraries were doing during COVID closures and limited hours and things, doing like take and make kits. That one wasn't counted as a program because it was more of a passive type activity. If you continue to do those, you can count them as a self-directed activity. But this also opens up, because of the definition, it also opens it up to other passive activities, like say a puzzle in your library, you can find a puzzle, that's a self-directed activity. Sometimes those are hard to count, they kind of do a sample, average week, and then multiply. Go through a larger library, it's gonna be hard to sit there and watch. Puzzle or play boy or whatever else to do in that section. Sometimes it makes it easy, like they have coloring sheets. And you put 50 of them out at the beginning of the day, and there were 30 left over at the end of the day, then you go to count 20 or 50. So we have this kind of broken down into age categories. We have children, age 11 and younger, then young adults, and then adult and self-directed activities. And then for summer reading programs, question last week, you do count summer reading programs in the program section, but we want to know specifically out of all the programs that you offered, did you offer a summer reading program for children, young adults, and adults? So this is just a yes or no, and then you have the option to enter how many children and adults participate in it. We used to ask, I think, for a number registered, number they did, and we'll change it to participated. It seems like that. Overdue fines. This showed up last year. This is now a national question. The national definition of this first thing here, does your library charge overdue fines for overdue library materials? That's kind of vague. We had started to collect this data. Based upon material type and borrower category, so we kind of try to keep that framework in their framework. That's why you'll notice it's a little bit different. One thing to note here is that overdue fines do not include charges for lost or stolen things. So if you charge for, let's say somebody that came to Lisa's library and I checked out the Lisa doesn't charge overdue fines if I return it a week late. But if I never return it at all, she sends me a bill for the replacement cost. That's not what they're asking here. If you charge for their replacement costs, they're just asking about fines. So like there's something that we're supposed to do. Not interested. So then we have a few options. Yes, we charge for all items. Yes, we charge for some material types. Some libraries may charge overdue fines for DVDs, but not books. Yes, for some patrons, they may charge overdue fines for adults, but not kids. Or no, we don't charge fines for anything. I have follow-up questions. If you charge fines by material type, please indicate the items below that you charge overdue fines for. So in this case, if it was just DVDs, you just click that. You didn't charge any fines, you just click on blank. Or if it was something else, like say you charge for hotspots. But nothing else, you just enter hotspots there. Or Chromebooks or something. And then borrower category here. Children, young adult. We had to pick an age category. I got flack when I was on Scott's Club for picking 19 or 54 and then picking 5 plus, but we decided. Nobody didn't want to be called a senior because they were big deal. There was a discussion in the programs part had a senior category, and there was a discussion of how to define that as 55 plus, 65 plus, 67, 72. So that's why we have a general, so maybe we have something good here. Meeting room use. So we talked before, do you make a meeting room, or rooms available to the public? What's the second space that outside groups can come and use? Can charge a fee, but you don't have to charge a fee. If you have a room, you hit yes. If you don't, hit no. If you report a guest, you can report the number of times the meeting room was used by outside groups. And then the follow-up here in 5.67 is do you charge a fee? And I have had some libraries that charge for commercial use or anything other than nonprofit. But for nonprofits, they don't. So in that case, you can either pick the yes or no, and then you can put in the notes. Something like, we don't charge for nonprofit use, we charge for. Outside circulation. So, do you have a drive-through here? You do. So, if you provide any outside circulation, you just enter this with a check mark. In this case, you provide a drive-through. If you did curbside pickups or just the only locker pickups, homebound deliveries, they did weekly deliveries to the nursing home or something. Or anyone, you would check that or the other category here, provided something else like this.
What if you only do it once in a while?
I would still check it if you service that you provide.
Okay, if they want you to bring them away.
Yeah,
What if you do it after the library is completely closed?
I would still check it. Because it's a service that you're providing people and they're,
I just
like
feel
if they're home
like
now. And maybe it's something that you don't do regularly, but like in your case, you don't take somebody. Work their day, get out. Have to drop stuff off and something that we provide the community. I would check it. Yeah. Library technology. Here you would enter the name of your automation software integrated library system like Biblionics. Wallet, whatever you use, center the name there. We do have a few things that we had in the technology section. I'm not going to be on that. Andrew Sherman, I think he spoke at one of your meetings, yeah, a couple meetings. So email will offer service, a number of services. One of some questions added in the survey that kind of helps the work that he does, so we can select narratives to share. Do you offer public internet access, yes or no? Number of internet computers used by the public, this would include your computer lab, and then, if you had, Chromebooks or laptops that you checked out in the library, or in-house use, you would use those there, or report these here. You wouldn't report them here if they circulated, so if you had Chromebooks that actually left the library, you report them in the other items category.
And, the library catalog doesn't count, right? Or catalog.
It has to be an internet accessible computer that the public uses, so your, if you have just used, like staff computers, you wouldn't count. And then if you just have a standalone computer that's not connected to the internet, that maybe has an offline catalog, you don't have that here. It has to be, you have to be able to use the internet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Filtering software. Note here, we are asking about software used to block certain websites from displaying. Not antivirus or restore software. So if you block pornography, on your public access terminals, we want to know what kind of software you use to block those websites. There's examples, this is the table more. Who's your ISP? What's your type of primary internet connection? Is it DSL, cable? Of course, we want to get everybody on fiber, not on fiber. I was telling Tammy that the Public Service Commission is meeting this morning to talk about the NUSF. You might have got some emails from me, some other people asking about update your internet information. Special construction part is something that the Public Service Commission administers the E-rate program. Stay tuned on that. You should be hearing today. We'll be setting out more information on that program. If you want that fiber, you might want to get it. Do you provide Wi-Fi? Yes or no? And then wireless sessions. The thing here is that at one time you reported observation estimates. Now you don't. So for most people, it's going to be a headache because they don't have a network scanner or software capture the people that are outside of the building. Larger libraries may have that running, they may be able to track that. If you don't just do it based upon what you observe. You know, you see people in the library, if that's how you're collecting the data, just report a 10A or a 0. But if you do have a network scanner or other software, and you do have a number, you can report that based upon estimate or actual count. Maximum speed of your download speed of your internet connection. We have this range here, this track with the ranges that we've been using. If you want to do a speed test, here you click on, we have a link there to the speed test. If you almost run that, I don't know if this will give you the speed here or since I'm remoted in my computer and LinkedIn. I'm not sure if it's that speed or the speed. I don't know. Try it. I think I was getting about 800 on Scottsboro, so maybe it's the state connection. You know, your speed is here, it's probably very fast. Obviously, when you do a speed test, it's going to depend on when you do it. If you did it in the morning, and there's nobody around, probably going to get a higher speed than if you did it after school. 878 megabits per second, so we're going to for download speed. Upload is a lot lower, that's probably because the state's throttling it down. So that now then put us in this this category right here. 800 megabits. And then these are some of the new questions that we're asking here. We want to know, do your public access computers run or have reboot and restore software installed? So this would be, and there's Sherm's given some examples here of the common ones: defreeze, clean slate, reboot, restore. This would be like if somebody came into your link access terminal and you should settings on your computer, you can just reboot it and it'll restore to your previous setting. So that's yes or no, and or NA. If you don't know, you can contact Sherm, he can probably walk you through it on the phone, just go out and check, see if you have it. If you don't have it, you probably should get it. And he can help with consultation to try and help you, look at that. Probably a security risk, if you don't have that, so they came in and kind of want to change things. And then 6.2 is, we're asking for what, what is that software? What's D3s is one of them. You just entered it. And then we want to know, there's two questions here. 6.13 is to report your actual download speed with a wired connection. And then the download speed with a mobile or wireless device. So like, we just did it via Wi-Fi. So I would just enter this number here, 878. And then from a wired, now if you don't have a wired computer, you just enter an NA here and then you can put in the note, all of our computers are wireless. That's sometimes. Generally, there's something kind of different table, but sometimes not. And again, here's another way to that speed test. Does your library have a makerspace? This is unchanged from last year. It does go to permanent state, it's temporary state. Temporary would be like if you had your makerspace put behind the board. It functions as a meeting room, but then pull it out for certain events and like a shared space. Virtual library visits. This is one thing that did pass for next year, so it's going to be your Google survey next year. That'll be nice. If your library website posted by us, we pre-fill it for you. But keep in mind, see a number there, that's the number of visitors to your library. 6.17, these are just yes or no questions. Do you provide any of these things, makerspace type items? We sometimes get requests from a library that may be looking to buy, like say, a laser cutter. They want to know who else has a laser cutter. Member of the public, who has a 3D printer in such and such area, and they will survey that. And then 6.18, if you have a makerspace items, do you offer any training? Just a formal training or program or informal one-to-one training. Then we have a series of visual literacy. Do you offer any training on these things? This is important for technology, innovation library. I just look like this. Hotspots, you have a hotspot lending program. You would also count those into other items, but because of all the broadband initiatives that are looking at state money, we wanted to add a question. This will probably go away. As initiative, planning stages, implementation stage. Going up staffing, this is exactly the same as last year. In 7.1, you report the total number of people. So the total number of paid librarians. Don't have to calculate the FTE, those staff does that for us. So in your case, Mancroft, if you just said you and Jody, you enter two people.
But,
You have another employee,
well, if we have substitutes come in and I have to go somewhere,
are they paid?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so if you have two substitutes, you have four. Okay. And then if the total hours of those four people is, I'll say you're open 40 hours a week and you divide that time amongst the four of you, you would then enter 40 hours. On FTE. Say you work 40 hours and doing 20, you would report 60. And then the other people, the other two people, 300 hours, then 7.4, we wanna know. Out of those total paid librarians, do any of those people have a master's degree from county, president, library science program? If you have one, enter them here as one person, and then the number of hours. They work. That calculates that. I usually tell people, like, one of the questions that we do get for paid librarians, sometimes people may not have librarian in their job title, it might be like library technician or library service associate or something like that. If the nature of their work is that they are working the reference desk, circulation desk, answering reference questions, I count them as a librarian. Other paid staff categories more for people that clean, accountants, budget person, maybe a shelver, they just shelve books, so it'd be more of a other staff. But generally, it's gonna be unclean people in the other building. So you'll notice a number of totals here. And then, job title for the director, most of the time that's director. Call something else, you know, whatever. And then hourly wage, about the salary commissioner. Total number of volunteers, that can be tricky. Kind of do the best you can with the number of volunteers. Sometimes you have more in the summer and less in the winter. And then the number of hours per week. Or volunteer.
How would you do that for summer reading? If you have some moms that come in for them, they're only there for every Wednesday in July.
I would still count them, yeah, and then kind of, if you can estimate the number of hours.
Okay.
Do the best you can. It's not a federal question, it's not super important, I don't know. There's a narrative section. You don't have to enter anything in here, you can just put NA if you want. A lot of people just copy and paste from their annual report. We do read through these. So if you're doing something special and you want something to happen at your library, like in your case, you might want to describe your experience with the vacation. It's a nightmare, not a nightmare, it's great, whatever. Or if that goes in your annual report, you just copy and paste it. You don't need to enter anything. You like to know what's new. And then the certification section, notice that this says most of the time it's gonna be the director that fills out the report. If there's somebody else, like, if Jody did the report, whoever I need to contact and follow up with. If I have questions. Obviously, like at Lincoln and Omaha, they have somebody else do the survey, and the director, they put their name. That's who I need to contact if I have questions. And then their job title. And so once you get down here, you enter all your data. There's instructions here for how to submit the survey. It kind of tracks with what we talked about earlier. You would first want to go up here to the show status. And you'd want to look at your edit checks. Do you have any edit checks? Do you need to enter a note to explain why those are outside of a certain range? Why those are exactly the same as last year, so on and so forth. Do you have any unanswered questions? Again, the required ones are the important ones. It's not gonna let you submit the survey if you have required unanswered questions. And then do you have flagged questions? It's gonna show up that question that we flagged earlier, like web URL. You wanna make sure you fill those in and unflag that question. Let me show you an example of an edit check. I'll scroll down here. Like here's an example of more common edit check for local government revenue. It says this year you reported $1,000, but last year that was $0. You know, that's kind of a large change what's going on. All you have to do, if that is correct, all you have to do in the federal notice, enter a note explaining it. Like in this case, last year we didn't get any money. Or deadbeat governor, or didn't get any funds. This year we did. Something like that, and then click on save at the bottom, and then we'll save it, and then you'll see that so many of them. So if I save that. We'll notice here that you see how that edit check, because we entered the note down here, it went from a red box to a green check mark. That means that satisfied that edit check. We entered the notes by it. Once you have all those edit checks resolved and answer questions with applied ones, you can then go over here to the submit button. And it's not gonna let us do the survey. Checks and everything. It used to be like, you'll see 3 green check marks here. And then there'll be another submit button down here, so it's a 2-part process. Hit submit first, and then I don't have any other checks or anything, but see another submit button. And then once you click on that second submit, it'll pop up. It says your survey's been submitted, and then I get an email automatically saying, Hancock Public Library sent the survey. I'll go ahead and look over it. If there's questions, I don't change any data. I will have to. Okay, I noticed this, did you mean this? You know, or sometimes if there's a note that doesn't really address the edit check, we may want to tweak it. Because that saves us time later on when we submit the data line to us, and they might, because they review all the notes. And if it doesn't, if they have a question later on, hopefully we get that cleaned up before we submit. Any questions? One, two more things before we wrap it up. So assuming your survey is done, out, then if I was over and you're going to still, I'm going to follow up. You get an email from me about the supplemental survey. This stays open throughout the entire year. So say your staffing changed or your hours changed. ID and password are the same. Looks like this, we'll have the library in here. We'd like to have you do this at least once a year, just maybe remind you about your survey, but like I said, if things change. We'll log again at any time to change your information. So staffing, board, state board member drop off. Friends Foundation, information, library hours, internet services. This information feeds into our see here comes from that supplemental survey. So these are changed for hours and supplemental survey. Usually it takes about a day, 24 hours. This page is that way. So it won't happen right away. We check this right away. Our IT guy has to release it. It usually takes that period of time to
Hopefully you'll want to change that reminder still.
one more thing, then, so then the survey ends in mid-February. Then we, enter a time period where we're cleaning up surveys, cleaning up data. We have a lot of surveys that get submitted the last week. Unfortunately. We have some cleaning up there, and once we get part of our data cleaned up and kind of get it ready to submit to IMLS, we then publish it, generally about April or May. We publish it on our website. If you go over to data services, and then libraries, the physical data, we have data files right here. This is the first one. We have them on the website going back to you want data from before that, we'll probably have them on paper or somewhere. Write it down. So like last year, we posted this data. This is then used to feed into the accreditation application. If you want to look at all the data, you can open it here in Excel format. Obviously, it's a pretty huge file. In this case, we highlighted these libraries didn't submit a survey, the ones that are included. But it's all right here, everything that's reported is here. If you wanna look at like a certain service measure, you can always email me and I work with this a lot, I can extract. Like salary information, if you wanna look at salary information for libraries, similar size. We can have Excel, extract libraries that are within, say, 15% of your legal service area or 20% of whatever. And then we can just include those things. When we get circulation, we can then pull those. We have the back end accreditation, like the library is up for accreditation or not up for accreditation, you wanna just pick everything that counts on the accreditation application. I have those files too, and I can send them to you. You'll notice here, these are these geographic codes you mentioned earlier. County, Waterloo's or part of the county, that's why there's a scale. Hartford County Library, Surrey County. Yeah, I can always, be happy to help with anything that you want to look at. Or if you want to look at national data too, that's published, IMLS is usually a year behind us. But we've published our fiscal year 2022 data in May of 2023. They published fiscal year 2021 data. So they're 2 years behind. If you want to look at a library or state, really. Just for those federal questions. So any other questions? Well, if you have questions, because
We have your own.
feel free. And
In big letters.
there also is here, there's a contact button for like, you can contact, those products store line here. They're owned by Baker and Taylor. They were owned by Baker and Taylor for a long time. And then Baker and Taylor sold the Luxat to Follett, so they're like 2 years, and then Follett owned them. Follett sold it back to Baker and Taylor, so they're back and it's Baker and Taylor company. But you can call them, say if you were having problems logging in or something, they can help you. Or just, you can always send me an email and I'll email our rep. That's something that doesn't look right, look into that. Or if you're having a login issue that you know that you've entered the right password. You can contact them, they're in New Jersey. So there's a little bit of time. For Easter time, so I think they kind of furlough, but maybe a few days that the rep furlough is not. Any questions? Thanks for hosting us here today. Thanks to the library. Go down and look at the library.
One time, Sam, you sent me, I think it was for maybe a presentation or something. You sent me a group, a peer group.
Yeah, so I can show you that.
That was so fascinating. This one library didn't even have anything. They were just there for interviews.
So,
I was
let me
just.
pull one. Here's, we have all of it, but here's one like, well,
It was for the Bancroft Library, but I thought.
let's see, there's on, I'll pull one of those here. So like, here's Broken Bow. These are their peer libraries.
It was like that.
And then, yeah,
I stayed
you
with
can
them.
look at what their libraries is, compare it. This is what feeds into the accreditation application, but when you're in the accreditation application, you can actually look at what was reported for each library. You go and look at like the median and the mean.
Oh.
Sometimes helpful if you want to look at student anomaly.
Fascinating.
Like your Broken Bow may say, those guys reported 25 meters and only have 8. Why is that different?
Really something.
Or revenue, for instance.
I was
Really exciting.
That's like everything that's used on the accreditation.
And I have questions.
Yeah.
It was for our revenue from our city. So our,
Right. That's great.
what?
Well, there's good there.
So our revenue, I don't know anything.
to, our budget, what our tax revenue is, what our tax allotment is. So in our case, it could, some of the big things in there, but it stays pretty consistent. But then we also get something called municipal cool aid, municipal equitable aid or something. So we get this other thing, and that definitely changes from, and that's from the state, I think. I'm just trying to figure, I'm sure I did not break any of that down. Because I really didn't understand, I'm trying to get it better in the longer budget. What are they?
To get the money from NLT.
So then,
For the $500 for
Yeah.
road cars. I don't know, I haven't seen them yet to know what they even look like, but yeah,
right.
yeah, fill them out and give them to Paul.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so.
Is there, do you have problems with it? I should just have you send it to me anyway, so I can see
Yeah,
it.
that's our.
Yeah.
That's our property tax allotment.
Yes, that way I can, so I can stop recording.